All right, well, let's get going. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's presentation in our ongoing digital cave survey series. I'm Aaron Bird. Happy to have you join us for the sixth and final presentation in this series that we are doing in conjunction with the survey and cartography section of the NSS. For those who are new to the series, we've already done 5 of these presentations, covering everything from the paper versus digital to a transformation from paper to digital, reduction of cave survey software, topo droid techniques, and digital survey cartography. The recordings for all of those presentations are available here on the site, and whenever I stop sharing my screen and John takes over, I'll post these links into the chat so you have them. So tonight, John is going to bring it all together in this final presentation with his discussion on project planning and management. This is a crucial aspect of the digital survey and sketch process that focuses on setting standards before projects could begin and structuring the data collection so we have consistency and organization throughout the surveying efforts. So John is an active caver, surveys and caves in Tennessee most weekends. He creates maps that he regularly submits to regional and national cave cartography salons where he's received accolades, recognizing his expertise. He also maintains a this website, Mapping Caves in Life in GIS. Combination of active field work and his cartographic skill gives him unique insights into how proper project planning can make the difference between a successful organized survey and one that becomes difficult to manage over time. So without further delay, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to give John the host, and the floor is yours, John.
All right. We should be able to see my presentation tonight. So this was originally scheduled to go somewhere in the middle of things in the layout of our presentations, but it got bumped to the end because I was traveling for work the night I was supposed to present. I thought, can't really give this from a car as I'm driving down the road. Better wait till the end. So I get to wrap up the whole part 1 of the series for everyone tonight. So tonight we're going to talk about some considerations specific to digital when planning your survey projects, and then talk about kind of exporting and sharing survey data in a group. How do we do that? What's the best way? What are our options? And then there are leave you with some final thoughts as we go forward from this. So all of this series has talked about in-cave data collection, digital survey. That's what we're there for. But there's more to that than there's more to the process than just data collection. That data has to be processed, which is some of what Aaron talked about. And then there's the whole behemoth of cartography. It's taking that data, taking the process data and putting it together in a final map. So just keep that in mind that there's more than just in-cave collection. We got more steps after the process. So keep that end goal always in mind, that our goal is to produce a map at the end. But along the way, we're also collecting accurate measurement of length and depth of the cave. We're looking at a description of it, potentially any attributes, biology, cultural significance, other resources that may be in that cave. Those are important as well. So with every step of the process and every trip that we take, we need to think what steps can be taken to create the best end results. What can we do ahead of time to make a better product on the end of the project? So things to consider with digital, what type of sketching are we using? Bert had some great examples of simple sketching where he's using a red line for the walls, and then he's using a gray line or the user line in TopoDroid to fill in all the details. He draws all of his symbology, all of his rocks like this, and that works great for Bert. Other folks use all the symbologies that are built into TopoDroid, We don't draw the little ticks for our floor slopes. We just draw the slope line. We're not drawing ticks for pits or for ceiling changes or chimneys. We're just drawing a line. And both work well depending on the situation. But for a project, it's important to establish what the expectations are and what will work best for you. Scale. This is something that is not communicated as much with digital as it is with paper. Paper, you're more locked in, where digital, you can zoom in, zoom out very easily. But those same equivalents of 1 inch to 20 feet or 1 inch to 50 feet, or their metric equivalents, translate into digital survey. All the digital survey applications have a little scale bar, so you can take your guess at an inch or a couple centimeters, and how many feet is that showing, how many meters is that showing, and progress through the survey like that, keeping it fixed relatively at a position. It can be hard to do. It's easy to zoom in or zoom out, especially on straight boring passages or on large oversized passages you can get lost in. But sharing what the expectation for scale of the sketch and the level of detail is very important. And the best way I found to do this is to provide an example sketch. Say, hey, this is what I'm looking for in this survey. Here's the scale on that. Passage is roughly this wide, and here's the level of detail, what should be captured in that sketch. That can be done in Cave as well. If I get to a team and I say, okay, in this passage, I would sketch these 6 features and not worry about these other 3. Just tell somebody straightforward, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. It'll make things easier. Again, with the level of detail, are you just railroad tracking the cave, or are you adding a lot of detail? Both are viable survey options and both have their place. We don't see a lot of railroad tracking anymore, but this specific project that I've got on screen, we're surveyed 2,500 feet in just 4 hours. And the goal for that day was to figure out what direction the cave was flowing so that we could learn where the water was coming from. We weren't curious of all the details, all the side passages. We just wanted a straight shot to figure out where the cave was going. And then there's the high detail. How much detail is too much? Where's the balance in that? Are you going to spend all day doing 200 feet of passage, or are you going to move quicker and get more passage done? It's typically somewhere in between. High detail and railroad tracking is where I go to. A moderate level of detail being recorded that will look nice on a final map. Other things, plan profile section. Are all 3 views needed? If we're doing a multi-mile maze horizontal cave, do we really need a profile view for that? If it's a maze cave, it's not going to look real good, but cross sections can make a really big difference. If we're doing a vertical multi-drop that's very short but very deep, the plan view is not going to add as much information as a profile view does, showing the depth of those pits as they drop down very quickly. And then cross sections are a big thing of discussion. How often should they be drawn? At what frequency? Is it at every station? Is it in between stations? How are you drawing those specifically in TopoDroid? Are you drawing them at each station? Are you using the cross-section tool in between stations or near the station to grab splays and do it? Or are you just sketching it off to the side? All 3 work pretty well, and all 3 have their place. How are the different levels of a cave being handled? That's another thing. If you've got layers of a cave stacked on each other, are you using different scraps that TopoDroid is set up to use and translate into Therion? Or are you just using different colors of lines? Are you using different sketches completely and not worrying about the different sections? Or are you running different surveys for each level? Each way has its own place. And it just depends on the project as to which one will be used and which one is best for that situation. And then once the survey is complete, exporting and sharing is a big step. Every project is going to be slightly different. Each cartographer is going to do things differently. And ultimately, it's their final call as to what level of detail and how that information is going to be shared back with them. I know my expectations have definitely changed over the past 6 or 7 years that I've been doing digital survey. It started out just as a mess. I really had no clue what I was doing, but then over time it's evolved and improved. And now I have very specific desires of what I want and how I want it shared with me for each project that I do. So a sketch is, TopoDroid is great, and then it has a variety of formats that it works with. But typically only one or two of those is going to be used for the map. When in doubt, the PDF is a great way to view and back up data, but something like Therion format can be a lot more efficient for that cartographer. When within each of these output types for the sketches, there's a bunch of different settings, which are wonderful, things such as scale, what to include, what not to include. But those make a huge difference when you're exporting it. Also, how do you handle scraps? Do you want each scrap exported on its own? Do you want them all in one layer? Can you work with the different layers? It's up to the cartographer. And some people like scraps, some people don't, and it's just up to them. With the data, it's the same thing. There's a bunch of different formats. Some folks use walls, some folks use Compass, and some folks use Therion and everything in between. A CSV file is always a good bet because most of those software can import a CSV file and work with it. But again, the settings within each file format can make a huge difference, and choosing the right format will make a big difference as well. So you're not stuck with something that's unusable and having to type in things manually like we used to do with paper. Um, Again, sharing a zip file is oftentimes the best way to do things because that'll zip up your sketches, your data, and everything else with that project and can share it in TopoDroid. I will say use caution because there was a versioning issue hiccup. It got resolved back in March, but I happen to have the version of TopoDroid. My friend happened to have another one where they weren't compatible. And it was an issue for about a week while we figured out why I couldn't open the data, trying to get stuff off his phone that he didn't have access to became a real issue. So just be aware of that. But if everybody's running the most recent versions of TopoDroid, it's not an issue because, like I said, it got resolved. And how is that data being shared specifically? You can do it in cave through Bluetooth, just phone to phone. That can get a little messy if there's 3 or 4 survey teams and not just one or two. Emailing is a good option once you get Wi-Fi or cell signal, but that doesn't always happen. Same thing uploading to an online file repository like OneDrive or Google Drive. Those are great to set up a project space where files can just be uploaded to and dumped quickly. But if you don't have internet connection or cell service, that can be a real big issue. I know I've worked up in Kentucky before where we're staying at a friend's cabin and there's no Wi-Fi there. There's no running water there. And so I've had to get creative and just put things on a thumb drive into my phone, and that can be plugged into the computer and process the data that way without Wi-Fi or cell service at all. And the time frame to deliver that data should also be communicated clearly. I usually wake up early the next morning and I'm processing data after a late night cave trip. And by the time other folks start to wake up, I'm hopefully got some data to show them. But if I'm having to wait a week or two for that data to come in, I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs thinking, where's my data? How am I going to update this? It can be rather frustrating. And then another thing as a data manager or the cartographer, if you've got people sending you data, you should be providing feedback and reviewing that quickly. If there's any issues that come up with the data, maybe some file corrupted and it just needs to be exported again, maybe something went weird with the email compression or something, addressing that quickly is a lot better than letting it sit for a while. And if there's any feedback that you can give, that's also very helpful. Say, hey, next time you're surveying on this project or surveying at all, try to do this a little bit differently because it works better. How I've learned the most from survey is looking at other people's data. I see how they do things slightly differently than I do them, and I can learn from that. And I just take the best attributes from everybody's survey data and hopefully make it my own and create a better product so we can all move forward together. And then something else is sharing back that progress that we made on the survey. If you got people surveying for you, they love it when you send out a trip report, give them a new overlay map of where that cave is headed, or give them a new updated length or depth after every trip. It just takes a few minutes to do, but that's good feedback and it keeps people interested and coming back hopefully to work on your projects. So the biggest thing is that good plans reduce future problems. I'm a big planner. I've planned and managed many a survey trips, some more successfully than others. But good plans will always reduce future problems. The best way I found to share this information is to write it down. I have kind of a running Word document with all of what I expect out of a survey project if somebody's sketching for me. It has what file formats I want, the resolution, the scale, everything that I talked about. It's all written down, and I can send that as a PDF to them. And I encourage them to download it onto their phone or tablet so that in Cave, if they have a question, how did John want me to do cross sections for this area? I'm off down the passage, down some crawlway they don't want to go down. They can just open up that PDF and find that spot where it talks about cross sections and how I want them done on that project. I've also received this before working on other people's projects, and it's super helpful because before I even get to the cave, I know what's expected of me. I know how I'm supposed to work, what workflows I'm supposed to do once I'm done, and in cave, how I'm supposed to handle things. And I don't have many questions at all to ask that person. Once we show up in cave, we can just get focused on surveying and go quick. So some final thoughts after my very brief presentation. We've had some excellent presentations in this series with Bert kicking us off with an overview of paper versus electronic, kind of how he does things. Derek gave an excellent presentation about digital and paper again. And then Aaron talked about how do we work with that data outside, play with some different softwares and different AI tools to help us better understand and visualize that data. Bo talked about his transition and his experiences going from paper to digital and just jumping in head first. The hiccups along the way, but how he was able to work through them. Then Dane last week shared, or 2 weeks ago, shared some of his advanced tips and tricks, some little things that he does that have helped him with his survey. So what I hope people have learned from this is that there's lots of different flavors. Everybody does digital survey slightly different. And everybody's right, and they just make it their own. There's no one set way to do things. Everybody just kind of takes what they like and they adapt it to them and do things differently. And hopefully, we can all learn something from this and to move forward and make things better. So, going forward, patience is very important. If you're learning digital or if you're just improving your digital skills, patience is the most important thing. Technology can be very frustrating, especially when your Bluetooth isn't working for some reason. You can't sync, you can't download any data, your phone starts being on the fritz. It can be very frustrating. So remember to always be patient with it. And I would encourage folks to go all in with it. All these features exist within TopoDroid for a reason. These advanced settings, these advanced tools, these variations of tools, they're there for a reason. So try to use them all. Even if you just use it for a couple hours or one survey trip and say, I didn't really like this. I think my way that I used to do it is better. But give them an honest try because you may find one that you really like or that really works for you and helps improve your survey process. And don't forget to ask questions. Every person that's presented in this series has done it to share information, and they are more than willing to continue to share other bits of information with you. I know a number of folks on this call I've responded to emails from years ago, and even as late as last weekend was helping folks with their digital survey stuff. And I'm always here as a resource, and so are all these other presenters. Just reach out to us. We're happy to respond to an email with any questions that come up or that you can think of regarding digital survey. So where does one start with digital survey? I always tell somebody to start on the couch. Sit on the sofa in the living room, pull out your phone or your tablet, sit there with your instrument and just start shooting lasers and then playing with the data. Play with the software, figure out what the buttons are, what do the buttons do, where are the buttons, how do I even draw a line, how do I make the Bluetooth work between my two devices. Just familiarize yourself with things. And then once you're familiar with it, stand up, survey your house or apartment. Learn how to use that software, learn how to do leg shots versus splay shots. How do you shoot the walls? How do you shoot the ceiling and the floor? How do you progress through the survey? How do you go back and go off a different station? But learn it in the comfort of your home so that when you get frustrated with it, like you will do, you can put it down, go do something else, watch a movie, come back to it a day or two later, pick it right back up there, and keep learning. Frustration happens, but just be patient with it. And if you're in the comfort of your home, trying to figure things out, it's a lot easier than stressing out in a cave with a group of folks waiting on you. And once you got your house or apartment surveyed a couple times, go practice in a cave. I always tell people pick a cave less than 100 feet. They want to go out and do their first mile-long cave to start with, but that's a bad idea. Start under 100 feet, start real small, and practice in there. Practice what works for you, what doesn't work for you, get your workflows down, and do 3 or 4 short caves. Do the whole process, survey it from start to finish. Do different caves, because in every cave something new is going to come up, and it's going to throw you for a loop, and you're going to have to figure out how to work through that issue. But after you get 3 or 4 of them done, then start to step it up. Try a 2,000 foot long cave next. Then once you're comfortable working at that level and figuring out how to process data from maybe multiple trips in that cave, keep bumping it up, and the sky's the limit at that point. So familiarize yourself from the couch, learn in your apartment or house, practice in the short caves, and then do it. Just get out there and survey. So that's it for tonight. I didn't have too much of a presentation, but hopefully folks learned something and plan ahead more. So I'm jumping into the chat now. I didn't see these as I was going. But Bill asked what I recommend for a backup or repository storage. So I have obviously my survey phone or tablet, whichever one I'm using, and everything goes to a cloud drive. When I get out of the cave that night, as soon as I can, I'll throw data up on the cloud somewhere so I can access it from whatever computer I'm working on at the time, or I can share it with friends that way. You can also just put stuff on a flash drive or something and throw it in a drawer somewhere. But I think cloud storage is a great way, and that's kind of the future of things. Have you used any sort of version control system like Git? Not really. I usually just kind of delete my old stuff and then move forward with the new stuff. I keep some older stuff around, but I'm usually just deleting it and overriding it with new stuff. Have I ever worked on a survey where there's a mix of paper and digital? Yes, absolutely. That's how I started. There's still quite a few projects that are just paper, and paper and digital work pretty well. There's different, odd things about them, different tricks that you got to learn to do. If you're working with Compass or Therion or Walls, that's where the biggest hiccups and hangups can be, is getting that data to all work together. And also sketches, because if you're doing paper sketches, you may have 6 sheets from a day. But if you're doing digital sketches, you just have one big sketch from a day. So that can be different. And there's also no warping of that sketch unless you've got a bad loop closure, because you're not going to mess up sketching your line on digital because it draws it for you. Do I have a link to the PDF? I don't have it with me, but I can email that to you, Nancy.
Oh,
all right.
John, do you,
Yeah.
I mean, going back to Bill's question, are there any tricks that in managing a project that has both digital and sketch maps, sketching paper maps? How do you have any tricks for how you integrate that information, especially when you're taking it over toward the cartographer?
Um, yeah, I'd say just versioning is very important, um, because it's easy to just add on things and create new projects with digital completely, whereas paper, you're typically working in one big project and appending to it rather than creating a new one. But I will say the first couple projects like that are going to be very rough. It's going to be a lot of working in circles, doing things not very efficiently, um, finding frustrations in the data and how they work together. And you just gotta work through them, and hopefully in the future you can just fully jump to digital and not have to deal with the paper.
Well,
But
it's got several teams nowadays. It's still, you're going to have some teams that are just sketching and some teams that are have the ability, the Tulpadroid and all the hardware that you need to do it.
Yeah.
So you got both inputs at the same time, but you have to integrate them in some way.
Mhm.
John, on your site, I'm looking at the TCS survey standards. Nancy, is
Yeah.
that what you're looking for?
No, it's a different document. Just kind of what I expect if from somebody on my survey
Oh,
projects.
on yours. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've looked at that one too. I'm not seeing it on your site though, so
Yeah, I don't think it's up there because I usually tweak it for every project, but I've got one I can
okay.
send out.
All right. So I have a question, John, about preparing for projects. I don't know, a lot of us do this because we really like it. I think probably everybody does it because they like it. um, and so sometimes we don't do any more planning other than, are the batteries charged? Is the gear mostly clean? Do we have enough gear? And then we go. Um,
Mhm.
but but kind of following from, I guess it was Bill's question there about mixing data. There's a number of folks. I think um, you have been in this category, at least in the past, where you're weighing the decision to go out and survey what seem to be a number of small caves versus picking one cave that's going to require um like say multiple trips to it, and motivating people to join you and things like that. What are your thoughts on preparing for those two different kinds of activities? um yeah, in advance, and like what how would you prepare differently? Like, let's say you in 2026 you were going to do small caves, in 2027 you were going to do long caves. How would you prepare?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'll use my weekends as examples. So last weekend I was down in Alabama with Julie, who's on the call, and our goal was to go survey 3 short caves on a piece of property. So my preparations for that are pretty low. It's pretty casual. We had already made landowner contact. We knew we had access to this property, and the caves were all short. 2 of them were supposed to be pits, and usually with pits, it's pretty much a one-man show for me. So preparing to survey that, I'm the only person sketching, um, and so I know what I'm expecting from that pit. I have a brief description of it, and I just kind of go do it. I've also done over 100 of these short caves, and so my process is very dialed in, and I can go just very quickly sketch it and survey it and be done with it. Then come home and draw the map in maybe an hour's time. But the in 2 weeks, I'm going to kick off a new project that I'll be going back to multiple times. And so the preparation for that is once again landowner access, but then everybody who's coming, there's 6 or 8 folks who are going to be there, multiple survey teams. So I have to make sure that everybody's on the same page. I have to communicate that information out, saying, "Hey, here's what we're expecting in this cave. Here's what your sketches should look like. Here's what kind of data we're looking for with how many splays are in each one. Are you doing like your left right ceiling floor as your first floor splays, or are you just not worried about that at all? I'm not concerned with it. But it's a lot more communication and making sure that everybody's clear on the project expectations before they show up that weekend and survey. So did that kind of answer your question there, Aaron?
Yeah. And do you use those opportunities to bring in new digital surveyors?
So depending on the cave, yes. Um, the one that I'm getting ready to kick off, it's not going to be a great cave. It's going to be a lot of swimming survey. So I don't want somebody fumbling a phone for their first time while they're trying to tread water or float a pool noodle in cold water. But for more tamed caves, I guess, or short caves even, I'll go out with somebody and say, "Hey, we're doing 4 caves today. Why don't you sketch one of them? I'll sketch the other 3. So that to me is an opportunity to pass that on, and then also invite somebody new along just to come watch, come hang out, go set stations, figure out the survey process just step by step in those situations.
You mentioned documentation piece. Do you ever use checklists? Like, sorry, documentation in terms, making the plan. So documentation for your plan. Do you use a checklist to help support that?
I don't, but I need to start. This past weekend, I missed a critical step because I didn't use a checklist, and so we joked that I'm gonna have to start using checklists because I missed a big step. So they are useful, and I will be starting very soon with checklists to make sure I got everything.
Would you mind expanding on what step you missed? I'm curious.
I forgot my helmet.
Ah, okay, that's a good
Uh,
one.
so
Yeah, I have too.
yeah, it worked out because I was able to borrow somebody's, and we just did one up, one down in the caves. But it's just one of those things where I got out there and I was like, "Yep, I goofed up. I forgot my helmet." Uh, but it worked out. Just other trips, it wouldn't have worked out that well. So I'll definitely be making checklists going forward.
So my son and I are going to New York. We talked at the beginning of the call. We're in State College, PA right now. And I had a couple things left to pack yesterday. And I looked down on a chair in my office. And there were 2 of my cave helmets. I almost drove away without those. So, and even I still had checklists too, So anyway, it
Mhm.
happens all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. So Angel just asked, it'd be great for a session where someone shows how to use TopoDroid and its features. So at the Southeastern Regional event, I taught a survey class where I did that. Coming up at convention, I'm also teaching a full day of survey class where I go over that. And I'm hoping to do another one sometime later in the year where I can just work with people one-on-one or in a small group setting of teaching digital survey. So I have a presentation coming soon that has TopoDroid 101. Where are the buttons? What do the buttons do? What buttons are important? So I'd say just keep an eye on that website that Aaron put in the chat. And in the next couple of weeks, I'll be uploading that presentation to there.
So John, another question, and this is about the longer cave survey projects. When you're preparing for those, what are your thoughts and what is your preparation to get consistent data from survey instruments? So for example, do you use a survey course or a comparison course, maybe outside the cave?
Um, so I don't believe in back shots. I believe in well-calibrated instruments. And I make it clear to everybody who comes on the trip, if you're using your own instrument, it needs to be calibrated and calibrated well. So the quick check at the beginning of the day is, does your front shot line up with your back shot? Spin the device once or twice, try it 2 or 3 different ways. If it's lining up really well, you're good to go. If not, it's got to be recalibrated. And I'm also a true believer in regional calibration. So I primarily survey in the tag region. So we've got roughly the same magnetic declination throughout. But if I go to New York next week, I'm going to be recalibrating my instruments. Up there is going to be very different. It's not going to point the same way. So I haven't had real issues with agreement between multiple devices. I just check, is the device itself good to go? Does the device itself agree front to back, side to side? Because that I think is where the issues come from more than device to device.
What does agreement mean to you? Like how many degrees different, say front side and back side?
So we do grade 5 survey, which is within 2 degrees, but I'd say within a half degree. I'm looking for that 0.5 degree when you're checking it front to back. It can be tighter than that, and that's encouraged. 2 degrees is pretty loose. It's more like a grade 5.5 survey, I'd say. Not quite grade 6, but roughly a half degree. And I've had excellent success with loop closures, multiple of them, all within under 1% over thousands of feet from doing that. Any
So
other
that,
questions?
yeah, that check that you do or you have people do with their instruments at the beginning of the survey, does that happen at any other time? So you're not doing front sights and back sights for every shot, but do you periodically check in on them?
No, no. If I start noticing some weird stuff going on in the sketch, then I'll, have somebody recheck it. But I found that Disto X2s and Brick 5s hold their calibration pretty well. Brick 4s can have some difficulties. So I've got a brick 4 for my Grotto currently. And if I'm using that, I may check it, once in the middle of the day or once at the end of the day to make sure it's still in agreement. But Disto X2s and Brick 5s I found usually do well throughout the day.
So we got a number of folks on the call. Are there other questions?
What have I seen in Brick 4 as the failure? I wouldn't call it a failure per se, but magnetic drift. It just starts to drift and to fall out of calibration throughout the day. You start off with a fresh calibration, and then a couple hours in, you start getting a lot more error shots coming through. You can hear it in the tone of the beep, and then also see it come through in Topo Droid highlighted red. You have difficulty hitting that leg shot. Displays come through fine, but the leg can get finicky, especially as the calibration starts to drift. And I think that was kind of a known issue with the Brick 4 as it came out and was widely used. But the Brick 5 was able to correct that, and they're doing much better. All right. Well, if nobody's got anything else, a big thank you to Marco and everybody who supports Marco in creating and maintaining Topo Droid. I know it's a lot of work has gone into that, and I'm very appreciative for it and very appreciative for the continual updates. It just keeps getting better and better. It seems like every time I have a frustration, I just need to go update Topo Droid, and that issue's been resolved. So thank you very much to Marco for doing that. We're all grateful for it. And if anybody thinks of any questions later on, feel free to shoot me an email. Come hunt me down next week in New York, and I'll be happy to chat with you.
So John, thank you for the presentation and for your participation in planning this overall series. And if there's enough interest from the community, we'll kick off again in the fall.
Looking forward to it. Happy to participate.
So John, if you can push the host back over to me, then I'll shut down the call and the recording.
Keep jumping spots here.
Marco, I echo John's sentiments. Thank you so much for Topo Droid and all the work that you've done for it and the updates that you put into it. Obviously, there's a
Yeah.
lot of us who are really big fans.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. John's presentation was very enlightening, I would say. A enlightening summary of everything. I think that even cartography can be made in many different ways.
Yes. Yeah, I know. I think every cartographer that I know does it differently. Nobody does it the exact same between cartographers.
Yeah. And that reflects on the way you collect data, both
Mhm.
measurements and sketches. Because I've seen many different way of drawing the cave maps, as well as many ways of collecting data. I think
Mhm.
that all of them have some good point, and all of them are useful in a situation or another.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Thank you for all of your presentations. That's it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We wouldn't be giving them without your hard work. All right. Well, I'm gonna jump off. I've got to get packing for tomorrow. Heading up to New York.
Yep.
Well,
Okay, safe travels to the convention and see you up there.
yep. I'll see you there.
Yep. And Marco, thank you again for joining the presentations and for all that you do for the caving community.
Oh, you're welcome. It was my pleasure.
Okay, take care, guys. We'll talk again soon.